Welcome back to this series of videos on data engineering with Microsoft Azure. Uh, in our last few sessions, we have taken an inbuilt dataset from Microsoft Azure and we created a machine learning pipeline using Azure Machine Learning Studio. And then also deployed this pipeline to an endpoint. In this session, we are going to take a dataset that is external to the dataset that is already inbuilt in Microsoft Azure, which will be usually the case. So let's say we have a dataset in our own hard drive, and we want to import this dataset, and then we will create a machine learning pipeline from that dataset rather than creating it on an inbuilt dataset. So let's see how this can be done. So first we will create our machine learning studio. Your machine learning studio. This process we already done before, so I have not spent too much time on this. But every time you need to start practicing again, you have to delete an existing resource group and create it again. And that's why we have to create this resource group again. Otherwise, we'll eat away all the free credits that you might be having. Name it as L. We have it deployed in central India. Note that we do not need a separate storage account. Already a storage account is created by default when we create a machine learning studio. Everything else can be left as is. Leave it as public. Create a machine learning studio. Take some time to create all the components that are required to build the machine learning studio. So let's wait for that. Taking some time. There are a lot of services that get created when you create a machine learning studio. Remember, we started with creating a data lake. When we created a data lake, there's only one or two services that was getting created. Now, when we are having more advanced platform as a service, we see so many different services getting created. Okay, the deployment is complete. Go to the resource. So if you want to go to the resource at a later point of time, you can always go to home, go to your resource group, and under the resource group, you will find the machine learning studio. You can also see there is a storage account that has already been created by default. This is normal storage account. Only thing is that it is only has a blob service. That means it doesn't, and by default, it has not created data lake that has a hierarchical namespace. Okay. Otherwise, it is the same data lake that it has created through this process when you're creating the machine learning studio. And then they created few other internal services like application insights or key vault, etc., which it is going to use for its own internal purpose. We will not, as the end users, will probably not be interacting with any of this. So the main service is this machine learning studio. Go there and we launch the studio. I think I've logged on by default to another workspace. So this is a very common problem. If you have logged on into multiple Microsoft account, even if you have signed out from one of the accounts, this remains. And unless you specifically sign out from the account, by default in the studio, it goes to that account. So I was using a different account and it logged on to the different account as opposed to what it should have logged on. That is this particular account. So trainer at praxis.ac.in. So that's where it should have logged on. But because I had logged on to earlier this account, it is it showed me this, and then it said that it is not accessible. So I log into the Microsoft trainer account now. So we are in the Microsoft Azure Machine Learning Studio. And this time we are going to take external data. So let's see how it works. First, we'll create a compute environment. Is necessary because it will be the environment where the machine learning model will work. So it has given a name, trainer one. So let me leave it like that. It has selected a standard CPU and GPU. Normally, a data engineer will decide what is the best CPU or GPU to go for. Creating the compute instance. Once it creates the compute instance, then only we can use the data and build a model of the data. Wait for some time till the compute environment is created. Normally, these computer environments take a little time to get created. Taking some time. Once it is created, we will go to this data and we are going to get the data from our hard disk. Remember, last time we did not go here. Last time we directly went to designer. And from the designer, when we tried to create a new pipeline, it showed us a set of sample data and we took the data from there. But this time, we are not going to work on the sample data. We are going to work on the data that is collected or uploaded from external source, which in this case, my hard disk. So my computer environment is ready. And now I can go to create the data. So my data is in my hard disk. So we'll first create something called a data asset. Each of these data that we are keeping here, they are identified as data assets. So my data asset is, let's say, diabetes. And the type of data here is a tabular data. Here you can see there are so many different types of data assets you can have. You can even have a file structure data asset. You can have different types of URI files. Okay. You can have multiple tables as well. But this one will have a single tabular data. It's not a table, it's a tabular data set. Tabular data set means that it can be a CSV or a similar kind of semi-structured data, which has a tabular structure, not necessarily a table. Okay. Give a description if you want. And here you have the various options. You can have the data from the Azure storage, which again is usually the case because one of the reasons why we're building this machine learning pipeline on Azure is to ensure that we are able to utilize the data lake that has been built on Azure and get the data directly from the data lake. So in one of the subsequent videos, we'll see that as well. So if that is the case, then you have to take it from the Azure storage. Or if you have the SQL databases in Azure, you will take the data from the SQL database. You can even take the data from the web files. But for now, we are going to take the data from the local files, which is usually not the case. If we could have done on taken the data from the local files, we could have easily run the pipeline on a Colab notebook or maybe on KNIME in a local environment or something like that. So we are wanting to do it on Azure because we want to use Azure's capability of data lake. So usually we'll use this Azure storage or SQL databases for this purpose. But for this particular exercise, where we just want to see how the data gets connected, we'll use it from local file. So select local file. And it is asking me that what is the data store type? That means when I pick the data in a data from an external source, it is going to store in a storage in Azure. Now, what kind of storage you need there, whether you want to have a blob storage or you want to have a Gen 2 storage. Now, since in this particular case, if you remember that when I showed you the storage, which has been automatically created by Azure, it has created, when we created the machine learning studio, it has created a blob store. It did not create a Gen 2 because it didn't have a hierarchical namespace. If we want to use that particular data store that has been the data lake that has been created, it will be a blob store. I could have created my own data lake and put it there, but this particular case is not required. So I will stay with my for blob storage that Azure has automatically created while creating the machine learning studio. So we'll leave it as blob storage. Okay. So I can now upload the file or folder from the path where it exists. So I'll pick it up from my local drive. Uploading the file. So uploaded this file diabetes.csv. So it has recognized this file is a comma delimited format, UTF-8, and has detected that this has header rows, and this is the data that it is seeing. So it has been able to do a preview of the file. And it's also telling me that if you want to change any of these data types, you can do that. Most of the data types, I think, is right, except the outcome, which is not actually an integer, it's a Boolean condition. That means 0 or 1, or maybe we can just say string, because we have not defined what is 0 or 1. So we'll just say the outcome is 0, 1, 1. It is a string function. It is not a numeric function. Apart from that, everything else, we will leave it as it is. And it will create the data from my CSV file into the blob store it has automatically created. You can see here, and if we go to the preview, you see the preview over there. In the profile, you'll be able to see the statistical, some of the key statistical measures over there. For example, the mean, max, if there are any missing values. So I think there are no missing values in the data set. We don't really need to process missing values over here. It is the 0 and 1, this is the frequency. So it is a fairly balanced data set on which we can do a classification model. Okay, and yeah, and you can so this is a preview of the profile, but you can generate a full profile. That means the profile of the entire data. If the data is very big, then large, then it will not be able to generate the profile for the full data. It will just give the profile for the preview. So there you can use the compute instance to generate the profile of the entire data. Right now, we can do that as well. We can just generate the profile of the entire data. In our case, it will probably be the same as the preview because our data set is not a very large data set. But in normal circumstances, this data set will be a large data set, and that's why we're doing it in the cloud. And there you might have to generate the profile. Okay. And here, if you go to the jobs, you'll see there's a profile generation job that has been generated. This job is running. And many times you'll see that this kind of jobs have this very interesting names, because if you don't give a specific name, it will kind of combine different names and make very interesting names from these jobs, for the jobs. Child jobs. So this type of jobs we'll use later on when we use the auto ML. But as of now, I think it is okay. We don't need to really run the job because all that we are interested in is basically the data has been read from my local disk and being stored in a data stored within Azure. So if we go to, so the job has been completed, so I should be able to get the profile over here. Job is completed. So now if I go over here, I will be able to see the profile. Now when I generate the profile, or rather when I profile, so this profile is not a preview. This is the entire profile that I'm seeing because I went from this view profile, which is what the job has generated for the entire data set. So if I also go to the data lake, go to the storage account. Is a storage account that we have. Blob service. And in the blob service, we will have a lot of containers. And we go to one of these containers, see the, so all of the data that is being kept will be kept in these containers. And one of these containers will also have our diabetes data set. Yeah. Be able to read it from here because it has been saved in a different format, but but we can read it. I think from this one we can read it. Yeah. Yeah, so you see that what it's doing is that it has created its own data lake where it is going to store various artifacts of the entire process, including the various artifacts of the model. And in that, in one of the containers, it also has the data that we have uploaded. Okay. So in the next video, we are going to see how we are going to use this data that has been imported from outside and build a machine learning pipeline on this.